The calculate function is considered the most important function in DAX, as it enables us to manipulate the filter context and tailor it precisely to our needs. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the calculate function and explore its ins and outs in great detail. And we're starting right now. Alright, so let's start by examining the syntax for the calculate function. So the syntax for the calculate function is similar to the syntax of the SUMIFS function in Excel. So on the first input, we have the expression. And the expression is basically the formula that you need to execute in the calculate function. And this is similar to the syntax for the SUMIFS function, where on the first input, you give it the sum range, which is also the formula that you need to execute, except that in the SUMIFS function, the formula is limited to only one option, which is summing. It can only do a summation, but in calculate, it can do any kind of formula. So it can do sum or average or any other formula. And then on the second input, we start adding our filters in calculate. So we start with the first filter. And this first filter input would contain both the column that we need to filter and also the value that we need to filter for in the column. Whereas on the SUMIFS function, we give it the column that we need to filter for, which is the criteria range 1, and then the value that we need to filter for, which is the criteria 1. So in case of the SUMIFS function, we input that as a pair. So these two inputs here on the SUMIFS function, each pair of criteria range and criteria is equivalent to the filter input in the calculate function. And then we can start inputting the second filter as well on calculate, which would be equivalent to the second pair of criteria range and criteria on the SUMIFS function. So you can see here the similarities between the calculate function in DAX and the SUMIFS function in Excel formulas, and we're trying to show you here the similarities so as to help you understand what the calculate function does. All right, so before we start, let's take a look at the data model that we have. So we have some dimension tables here. We have the calendar table, and we have the product table, the region table, and the vendor table, and we have a sales table, and they are connected using common columns here. So the calendar table is connected to the sales table using the order date column, and the product table is connected to the sales table using product ID, the region table using region ID, and the vendor is connected using the vendor ID column. All right, so let's start with the basics of the calculate function. So what does the calculate function do? So the calculate function enables us to modify the filter context for an expression or a calculation. So here we have a matrix visual, which is like a pivot table in Excel, where we have the year added from the calendar table in the rows area and the region added from the regions table in the columns area. And then in the values area, we have this measure here, which is the total quantity measure, which is a simple measure that simply sums up the order quantity column on the sales table. So you can see here that the results are simple results that are according to the filter context in each cell. So for example, the filter context in this cell is that the region is equal to central and the year is equal to 2021, and we get the result for the quantity for the central region and the year 2021. And here you can see here that the result is for the East region and 2022, and so on and so forth. And if you don't understand the concept of the filter context in DAX, I've created a video before explaining the different evaluation contexts in DAX, which are the filter context and the row context. So I'd highly recommend that you watch that video before watching this video about the calculate function if you don't understand the concept of the filter context. And the link will be down below in the description. All right, so now let's say that we create another measure, which is for calculating the quantity for 2022. So we're gonna use the calculate function here. So quantity in 2022 is gonna be equal to the calculate function. So we're gonna start with the calculate function here, and the expression is gonna be our total quantity measure, which simply sums up the quantity column on the sales table. And then we can add a filter, where the filter is that the year column on the calendar table is equal to 2022. And then we'll close the brackets and press enter. And let's copy the matrix visual that we have here, and we'll remove the total quantity from the values area and add the quantity in 2022. And you will notice here that the results are for the quantity in 2022 in the different regions. So you can see here that it's forcing the results for 2022. So you can see here that the results for the different regions are what we have here. You can see that it's forcing the results for the different regions in 2022. And it's forcing it on the subtotal for the years as well. So on the subtotal for the years, we're not getting the subtotal for all the years. We're getting only the amounts for 2022. So you can see here that it's forcing a filter of 2022 on the year column in the calendar table. And that's exactly what the calculate function will do. So although the filter, for example, on this row here is for 2021, it's forced a filter of 2022. And so the results that we're getting are the results for the year 2022. And although the filter here as well for the year column is for all the years, so 2021 and 2022, we're only getting the results for 2022 because it's basically overriding the filter context in the row here where the filter is for all the years, and it's giving us only the results of 2022 instead of the results for all the years. However, you will notice as well that it's not overriding the results for the different regions. So you can see here that the results are different for each region because the filter specified here in calculate is only overriding the filter context for the year column. So it's only modifying or overriding the filter context for the year column to 2022, but it's not changing the filter context on the region column. However, if we create another measure here, so I'll copy this measure, and we'll just create another measure that just adds another filter here. So the measure will be quantity in 2022 and East region. So now we can add another filter here for the region, which is that the region is equal to the East region. So if we do that, and let's copy again our matrix visual, and let's remove the quantity in 2022 measure here and add the quantity in 2022 and the East region, you will notice here that the results are only for 2022 in the East region. So you can see here that this is the value for 2022 in the East region, and you will see that the calculate function that we created, which is the quantity in 2022 and East region, is actually overriding both filters here. So the filter for the year and the filter for the region as well. And it's only giving us the result for 2022 in the East region. So you can see here, this is what the calculate function does. It simply modifies the filter context for whichever column that we add as a filter for it. And because we added here both 2022 as a filter and the East region as well as another filter, so it's modified the filter context for both the year column and also the regions column here. All right, so let's talk about the calculate modifiers. So the first two calculate modifiers we'll speak about are the all function and the remove filters function. See, so the all function and the remove filters function, they both do the same thing, which is that they remove the filters from a table or a column. So let's say that we need to create a measure that helps us calculate the quantity for all the years. So we can actually create a new measure here, and this measure will simply give us the quantity for all years. And this will be by using the calculate function. We will add the total quantity measure here, and then we'll use the all function here to remove any filters from the year column on the calendar table. So if we create that measure and press enter here, and let's copy this matrix visual here, and let's remove the total quantity measure and add the quantity for all years, you can see here that now the result we're getting is the quantity for all the years. So you can see here that we're getting these results here across the different regions here for all the cells, because we're removing any filters on the years. So you can see here we're getting the results for the grand total for all the years here in these cells here. However, the results are still being filtered by the region because we don't have any modifiers on the region, right? We don't have any filter removal on the region, and we're not replacing any filters on the region. So this is why the results are still being filtered by the region. However, because we're only applying the filter removal, or we're only removing filters on the year column, we can still filter by other columns on the calendar table. So for example, if we add the quarter column here as a slicer, we can still filter by quarter. The data is still going to be filtered by quarter because our filter removal is only applied to the year column on the calendar table. But if we change that, let me also change the spelling here, or adjust the spelling, correct the spelling for this measure. And if we create a measure where we calculate the quantity, but instead for all the years, we'll do it for all the calendar table. So instead of adding the year column only on the calendar table, we'll add the whole calendar table. And let's copy this matrix visual here, and I'm going to remove the all years, the quantity for all years measure, and add the quantity for all calendar. And as you can see here, now when we change the quarter, you can notice here that there's no change on the results that we get on the matrix visual at the very bottom here. And this is because we've removed the filters on all the columns on the calendar table, and this includes the quarter column as well on the calendar table, because the quarter column is part of the calendar table. So you can see here the difference between applying the all function on a single column. So if you apply the all function on a single column, it will remove the filters from only that single column, and it will just disable any filtration on that single column. But if you add the all function to the whole table, then it will disable the filtration using any column on that particular table. And of course, because we don't have any filtration removal using the all function on the region column, the results are still filtered by the region. However, if we add the all function to the region column as well, in addition to adding it to the calendar table, so I'm going to copy this measure here, and I'm going to create another measure, and we can add another filter. We can add it either to the region column or to the region table. Let's add it to just the region column here. So if we do that and press enter, so I just need to change the name of this measure here, so because it can't be the same as the other measure. So it will be quantity for all calendar and all region. So we've added the all function here to the calendar table and to the region column here. And let's copy this visual. And if we check the results on this visual here, you'll see that we're getting the results here for the whole of the calendar table. So no filter is being applied here by the quarter, and we're also getting the results for all the regions as well. So you can see here that the number we have here is actually the number for all the years and all the regions, which we have here. As you can see, this is the number for all the years and all the regions. This is the number that we have here because we have a filter applied to the whole of the calendar table, which will give us the results for all the years, and it's also being applied to the whole of the region column on the region table. And because it's only being applied to the whole of the region column on the region table, then if we use another column on the region table, which is the region ID instead of the region column, then you can see here that now the filters are being applied to this table because we're using a different column than the column that we applied the all function to. And the all function is similar to the remove filters function. So if you replace the all function with the remove filters function on any of these measures, it will basically do the same thing. So with calculate, the all function and the remove filters function do the same job, except that the all function produces a table and can be used with other functions, but the remove filters function can only be used with the calculate function. All right, so I hope that this exercise has helped you understand what the all function does and what the difference is between applying the all function to just a single column and applying it to a whole table. All right, so let's now explain another calculate modifier, which is the ALLEXCEPT function. So the ALLEXCEPT function will remove the filters from all the columns of a table except some columns that you would add as exceptions to that rule. So you would tell it what table you'd like to remove the filters from, and then you can add some columns that would be an exception so that the filters would not be removed from these columns. So for example, I could create a measure here, which is the quantity for all except the month column on the calendar table. So I'm gonna use the calculate function here, and I'm gonna add the total quantity, and then I'm gonna use the ALLEXCEPT function, and first I'm gonna give it the table that you'd like to remove the filters from, but then I will just accept the month name column, let's say. So I'm gonna remove the filters from all the columns of the calendar table except for the month name column, and let's close the bracket here and press enter. And now if we copy this matrix visual, which is a standard matrix visual that contains our total quantity, and just replace that with the quantity all except the month column, you can see here that the filters are being removed here from the year column because it's not being accepted. It's not part of the exception on the calendar table. If we add the quarter as a filter as well here, so if you add the quarter as a filter, you can see here that this is not part of the exception of removing the filters. So the filters are still being removed here, as you can see on this matrix visual at the bottom. However, if we add the month name instead of the quarter, you can see here that if we add filters here for the month name, you can see that the filters are affecting the matrix visual at the bottom here. So let's remove the quarter filters here, and you can see here that the month name is affecting the filters on the matrix visual at the bottom, and of course it's affecting the filters on the matrix visual at the top. But it's affecting the filters on the matrix visual at the bottom because the month name is the exception here on the formula, right? This is what we said on the formula. We said, I want you to remove the filters for all the columns on the calendar table except the month name column. So the month name column here is the exception, and this is why the filters are being applied and are not being removed. By the way, you can see here that on the month name slicer, we have the months not in the right order of the months. So it's not like January, February. They're actually being arranged in an ascending alphabetical order instead of the usual order for the months, which is January, February, March, etc. So actually to change that, what we can do is to select here the month name column, and you can see here under the column tools we have this sort by column, and we'll sort the month name by the month column. The month is basically the month number column. So you can see here after sorting the month name by the month number, we get the proper order of the months. So this is the ALLEXCEPT function, which is another calculate modifier, which basically removes the filters from all the columns on a table except for one or more columns, because you can add more exceptions here to the ALLEXCEPT function. So you can still add more columns as well for these additional columns to be included on the exceptions. All right, so now we're going to talk about another calculate modifier, which is the KEEPFILTERS function. So the KEEPFILTERS function, what it does is that it allows us to keep the filter context that is outside the calculation. So in the rows area, for example, or the columns area, or coming from a slicer or from another visual or from the page filters, for example, it allows us to keep that filter context and add it in addition to the filter context that we specify in calculate for that particular column, so that the calculate function does not override the current filter context on that column, but it actually adds another filter to the filter coming from outside the formula as well. So let's take an example. So let's say I create a measure for the quantity in the East region, so quantity in East region, and I also add the KEEPFILTERS function to that. So I'm going to use the calculate function to calculate my total quantity, and then my region is going to be the East region, and I'm also going to wrap that inside the KEEPFILTERS function here. I'm going to close the brackets for the KEEPFILTERS, close the brackets for the calculate function, and press enter. And now if we copy this matrix visual here and we change the total quantity here to be the one for the KEEPFILTERS function here for the East region, you can see here that what happened is that we added a filter for the East region to the current filters applied for the different regions as well. And because we added a filter to the East region in addition to the current filters applied for the regions as well, the result that we get is only the results for the East region, because the result is simply the intersection of the filters. So here on the calculate function, we have a filter for the East region, and on this East column here, we have a filter as well for the East region. So this is why we get the results only for the East region, because for the rest of the regions, I'm just going to show the items here with no data on the region column. For the rest of the regions, you can see here that we're actually getting blank results. So we're getting a blank result because there's no intersection between the East region and the North region. They don't intersect. It's either East or North. For the South region, it's the same. It's either South or East. So this is why we get a blank value for the rest of the regions, and we only get a value for the East region because there is an intersection here on the filters, because there is a filter here for the East region, and the filter on the calculate function is for the East region. So you can see here that the KEEPFILTERS function modifies the behavior of calculate. So instead of overriding the filter context on the region column, it actually added to the filter context. So for example, if we create another measure as well here, so if I create another measure, so instead of this being only for the East region, it would be for East or West as well. So it would be East or West. So we can just add another filter here for the West region. So here it will be the quantity for either East or West. And if we press enter, and if we copy this visual as well, so let's copy this visual and let's add the one for East or West. Here, you will see that the results that we get are the ones for the East and also for the West, because we specified here on this calculate function that we need the results for East and West, and we need to keep the filters. So here we get the results for the East because the results will intersect with this filter context here for the East on the results for the East region, and also for the West, the results as well will intersect with the results for the West region here. So you can see here that when you use the KEEPFILTERS function, the result will be the intersection of the filter context that is coming from outside the calculate function and also the filter context that you specified inside the calculate function and wrapped the KEEPFILTERS function around it as well. So the KEEPFILTERS function is another important calculate modifier, as it allows us to preserve the current filter context that is applied from outside the calculate formula and also add more filters to it. And so the result would be the intersection of the filters inside calculate and the KEEPFILTERS function and the filters coming from outside the calculate function. All right, so let's now talk about nesting calculate functions inside each other. And although this is not done a lot because of the performance implications, it's useful to understand the behavior of nesting calculate functions inside each other. So the general rule is that the filters on the outer calculate function will be executed first, and then the filters on the inner calculate function. So here, let's create a measure which is by using the calculate function here. So we calculate the total quantity for the region being equal to the East region, and we are going to wrap that in another calculate function so that the expression for the outer calculate is the inner calculate. So this is the expression argument here, and then we'll add another filter here for the outer calculate, which is that the region is going to be equal to west, let's say. All right, so now we have an inner calculate and an outer calculate. Let's actually try to modify how this is written so that it would be easier to read. So you can see here that we have an inner calculate and an outer calculate, basically. So here's the inner calculate where the region is equal to the east, and then there is the outer calculate where the region is equal to the west. So we said that the filter on the outer calculate will be executed first. So this filter here for the west will be number 1, and then this filter here for the east will be executed second. So this is going to be the second filter that is executed. And let's also make sure we rename this measure. So this is quantity where the east is wrapped in the west, right? So this is east wrapped in west. You can see here east is inner and west is outer. All right, and let's copy this visual here, and let's remove the total quantity measure, and let's add the quantity where the east is wrapped in the west. And you can see here that the result that we get is actually the result for the east region for the different years here. So you can see here, this is the result for the East region for 2021, and this is the result for the East region for 2022, and this is the result that we get across all the regions here. And this is because our inner filter was for the East region and the outer filter was for the West region. And we said that when we nest calculate functions inside each other, we said that the outer calculate will be executed first. So the filter for the outer calculate, which is the west, this is going to be executed first, and then the filter for the inner calculate here will be executed second. So west first and then east. So it's basically we're going to filter for the west and then we're going to filter for the east, and the filter for the east here, because it's a calculate function, so it's going to replace the filter for the west. So in this case, the filter for the inner calculate will simply just replace the filter for the outer calculate function. All right, so let's take another example here for nesting calculate functions. So let's say I create another measure here, and in this measure, I'm going to wrap all the regions here, the calculate function having all the regions, I'm going to wrap that inside the east region. So you can see here that all the regions is basically the inner calculate, and then the east is the outer calculate. So we said that the outer calculate will be executed first, and then the inner calculate will be executed after that. So what do you expect the result for that to be? So if you press enter and then we copy this matrix visual here, and instead of having the east wrapped in west, we'll add the all regions wrapped in east, you will see here that the result is basically the quantity for all the regions for the different years here. You can see here that the results that we have here, which is the result for all the regions for the different years, are the results that we're having here for all the regions. And this is because we have two nested calculate functions here where basically the filter for the east region is executed first, and then the filter for removing all filters here on the region column is executed after that. So as we said, the outer calculate filter, which is east, is executed, and then we basically after that remove all filters on the region column, and this is why the results we get is for all the regions here, the quantity for all the regions, but of course they are filtered by the year column because we don't have any calculate modifiers here for the year column. But if we do this the other way around and we basically reverse the position of the filters in the calculate, or basically we make the inner calculate the outer calculate and vice versa. So if we make the all region here be the outer, and then this one will be the inner calculate, and let's make sure we have the correct brackets applied and everything. So yeah, so the outer is going to be all the regions, and then the inner is going to be the east. So this way, this one is going to be executed first, and this one, the inner one, is going to be executed second. So if we do that, actually we need to make sure to change that. So this is going to be east wrapped in all regions. We just need to change the name of the measure here. So if we do that, and now let's copy again this visual, and let's remove the measure here, and this is going to be east wrapped in all regions. We'll notice that the result we're getting here is the result for the east region here. So as you can see here, the result we're getting is the result for the east region, and we're getting that for all the regions. And this is because the first filter that we applied, or the first filter modifier, is basically removing all filters from the region column. So here's the first one that was applied, removing all filters from the region column, and then the second one is adding the filter for the east region here on the region column. So the result, the net result of that, is having the results for the east. And of course, all the results are being filtered by the year, because we don't have any modifiers for the year column on the calendar table. Alright guys, so this concludes our video today. So if you have any questions regarding the calculate function, please let me know down below in the comments. And if you'd like me to create more videos about DAX and Power BI, let me know below in the comments as well. And if you found the video helpful, please make sure to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified with all future videos. And please also make sure to follow us on social media. You'll find the links down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.